unity. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
Greetings, 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 and greetings once again. Welcome to our program, The Silence of Our Friends. It was Dr. King who said some time ago, the only thing that will be remembered in the end will not be the words of our enemies, but in fact, here it is, the silence of our friends. And so we're here tonight to give, let's just say, an antithesis to silence. We want to combat silence. The scripture teaches over in the book of Ecclesiastes, for those of us who believe in the word of God, that there is a time and a season for all things. Time and season, in my mindset, equals purpose. And someone should probably type that in the chat. Time and seasons combined equals purpose. People understanding their timing, people understanding their season will bring themselves to their God-given purpose and purposes. But anyway, in that same third chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes also says that there's a time, I think there are 18 or 19, or if not more, opportunities or something that gives the balance, not 6, 7, but anyway, gives the balance of God's mindset, because he is a balanced God about the matters of life. And one of those matters, he says, there's a time to be silent. But just like there's a time to be silent, there's also a time to speak. And so we're here to awaken people for their platforms of speaking out, decrying and debunking wrong, being able to adjust to things that are not right. I do want to just commend our sister Alicia Keys on her rendition of "Lift Every Voice." Again, the song was written as a poem by James Weldon Johnson, a former Jacksonvillian, the Jacksonville, Florida. Shout out to Jacksonville, Florida, as myself, and moved on to New York with his brother. And his brother set the poem that he penned to music, and it became, unbeknownst to them, it caught wind all over the country and has quickly become something known as the Black National Anthem. And we do need one as Black or comelated, melanated skinned and people, because if you look at the second stanza of what is known as this country's national anthem, you see references to the slave, you see references to the hireling, you see references to the slave being in his grave. And certainly that is not something that we wish to portray or communicate on ourselves as a people. And it goes back to the time when the song was penned. People of color were not seen as equal human beings with our white-skinned counterparts, whom we love, by the way, but there's a difference. And so lift every voice. Every voice has a place. Every voice has significance till earth and heaven rings, which means there's a non-ending plight or significance, something that we have to continually adjust to and for with our voices, with our votes, with our responses to right and wrong issues in our government and in our world. And then, of course, let's sing with harmony. That means we're finding others with a harmonious flow, a harmonious cause. And of course, that is that of liberty for most of us, the non-ending purpose, not just freedom, but then liberty. Freedom, again, is being freed from encumbrances or restraints, but then liberty gives people the opportunity to, in an equal way, pursue those inalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we had that given to us again in the preamble to the Constitution, then again, the Declaration of Independence, and again, as this country in 1776, the Declaration of Independence was given July 4th. We've adopted as the date for that. And on July 4th, 2026, our country will be 250 years old. 250 years of age, a very young country, a country where this idea of democracy was, let's just say, an experiment. It was an experiment, democracy. And this country was founded upon the ideals of democracy on the one hand, and then on the other, democracy for white skinned people as a country, not taking into consideration melanated people. Because, and we know that because the fathers and framers of this country, who 51 of whom signed the Constitution, I think it was, while 43 or so were enslavers. They had slaves while they were declaring that all men were created equal. They were really insinuating all white men, because this country was founded upon the notion, Thomas Jefferson being the father of liberty, many people would say the father of the Constitution, the father of what was then known as democracy as an experiment in this newfound land. But himself, Thomas Jefferson, owned slaves and had children by his I need a good way to say this. One of the slaves, and I also want to type her name in, and I'll give it to you if someone doesn't type it in very quickly. Had a number of children by his favorite slave, as it was. And so we have a mixture on the plantation. Even as he was declaring that all white men were created equal, he was making black skinned children. George Washington, the first president. I want someone to look this up. Search it out real quickly and put it in the chat. How many slaves did George Washington own? Yes, George Washington. Thank you, Pamela Dobbins. She has it. Sally Hemings. And someone else tell me how many children Thomas Jefferson was alleged to father, or sire is probably a better term, with the slave, the black-skinned woman, Sally Hemings. Yes, it was called the American Experiment. Thank you, Theresa Thomas, our resident historian. 1776 to present, 250 years. That's right. Our math is correct. Our math is mathing. But how many children did Thomas Jefferson, the father of the U.S. Constitution, sire by Sally Heming? Then tell me how many slaves was George Washington purported to have owned. So I want everyone to share. Let's see how many shares we can get out there this evening. In as much as I'm not coming every week, but at least once a month, I'm here to do the silence of our friends. It was Dr. King who said on another occasion, there's nothing in the world as dangerous as sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Then our lives begin to end on another occasion. It was Dr. King who stated our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about things that matter. And so we're here to sort of bring closure to silence, unjustified silence. We're bringing closure to that. Theresa Thomas, I said, how many slaves did George Washington own on his plantation? She said many. Now she comes back and says hundreds. I mean, I'm telling you, I think I did a program years ago, the Silence of Our Friends program, and the best I can narrow down, I think it was over 200 slaves that he was given some as a young boy by his then stepfather, who married his mother, George Washington, and then he purchased slaves himself. Yes, George Washington, who chopped down the cherry tree, who never told a lie, and all that kind of thing. But here we are, was a slaver. And so, can you all help me with sharing right now? Let's take a minute and share. Type it in the comment section that you have shared. Give us a thumbs up. Make sure you have subscribed to our YouTube channel. That really helps us get the word out. And then, of course, if you will type in the subject, it's a question, in the form of a question. Has Black History Month played out? The real question here, is there any use or of celebrating in the month of February, Black History Month, which has derived from Black History Week. Again, I'm Georgia Matthews II. For those of you that may be new to the channel, I'm your black-shirted egalitarian, and the word egalitarian simply means a person who is has asserted himself or herself, or they're characterized by their stance, verbal and positional stance for equality of all people, regardless of skin color. That's an egalitarian. Now, we are here to deal with certain subjects. I have this one that's a running subject. When you think about education, and so you have to consider everyone is born into the universe, into our planet, the Earth, as an infant. You have a mind, but you don't know what it is you're thinking. You have a tongue, but you have not learned yet how to communicate. You have ears, but you're not sure what it is you're hearing. Legs, but don't know how to walk. Let's just say hands, but you and fingers, and you don't know how to use them. So that means that everything that you know how to do, everything that you know of, everything that you have some consequence in terms of knowing, someone taught you. And so when we think about that, then we have to raise the question, what happens when supremacists and racist bigots are over education? We have that as a situation now with the cabinet member who is over the Department of Education, nationally speaking. I won't get into that because that'll throw me somewhere else. And I don't want to call out her. You know, you think about this person who is over education is the wife of, I think it was, I get the acronyms mixed up now because there's so many wrestling foundations. But her last name is McMahon, and she's the wife of the same McMahon who was over the world. I think it's WWE, World Wrestling, WWF, WWE. I get them mixed up sometimes, but that's his wife. And you think about, okay, I told you I would get off on the subject. Let's leave it alone. So we speak because it's necessary to ensure others know that we're alive, one, and due equal respect. And I don't know how many of you will agree with me, but you are due equal respect. And then, with that in mind, we're here to combat this subject of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is a state that occurs after a person has experienced an ongoing stressful situation. They come typically to believe they're unable to control or change the situation, so they stop trying. They don't put forth any effort to resist. Even when they can and could make an effort to resist, they don't even try because they have been dumbed down on the other side of the events that have taken place. Now, I want to get into a few things tonight. I'm going to show you a couple of clips, but remember, we're here to deal with these seven mountains of influence, the influence or systems that control every culture, every civilization, the underpinnings, the foundation of a culture. You know, you can define a culture as one thing, but a culture or civilization is really defined by these seven mountains of influence or seven systems that rule every culture. You can apply this anywhere in the world. It is true. And these really derive from the ninth chapter of the book of Proverbs, where we understand that even God understood and God helps us to understand that cultures are built from systems. And there are seven. The mountain of religion. So that encompasses world religions, Buddhism, the Baha'i faith, Christianity, as some would say, Islam, world religions. Then, of course, the family mountain or system, mothers and fathers, the absence of one or the other. In the home becomes a shaper of the way people think, the way they go out into the world, whether they vote, whether they participate in the civics of our world. Then, of course, the mountain of education. Education is a shaper of the way people think, their levels of education, levels of the lack of education, or miseducation, or maybe even under education shapes the way that person responds to life, the lens through which they see the world. Of course, the mountain of government that has everything to do with the political structure. Every government has a political structure. You have capitalism, then of course you have other shapers of governments. And it's one thing to say you have a government. I've done programs on this. It's another thing to describe that government by the political system that is in place. and we are resisting now an authoritarian styled government where you have a ruthless, evil dictator who makes certain decrees, certain demands, and there uh, are no checks or balances. You don't have the pivot of the three branches of government as we do here, at least constitutionally, in this country. I'll get into that another time. Then, of course, the mountain of arts, and that has everything to do with how we celebrate publicly and or privately, recreation, movies, music, sports, entertainment, so forth and so on. Then, of course, media, and that's one thing that dictatorial persons will seize many times is media. We saw it with Adolf Hitler. We saw it with Mussolini, so forth and so on. You saw it. They are over the media because that the media shapes public opinion. You have private thoughts and processes, and everyone has them. But then when you have groups, the shaping of the way groups of people, blocks of people think, you spin ideas and concepts through the internet, of course, social media, the socials do it, so forth and so on. Then, of course, the twins, I call them business and economics. They go together. And that is a shaper of culture altogether. Now, our subject, and again, thank you for everyone who has joined us. Thank everyone who has shared and who is sharing. Good evening, Pamela Dobbins. Thank you, Bernice Redden. Thank you, Carolyn Banks. Thank you, Faith Walker. Thank you so much for being there. Connie Demand, thank you. Hello back to you. And I'm waving back at you, back to you as well. E. Hale is with us. Thank you again. Everyone type in the subject if you have not already. Please do that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me. Sandra Smith, good evening to you. Larissa Thomas, good evening to you. Thank you all for being there. Thank you very much. Sam Cunningham, she said, good evening. Great people. I agree. Good evening, Abraham Smith. Hello back at you, sir, or to you. And then, of course, good evening. I want to look at this subject, and I want to take the time that we have available to adequately and appropriately address this subject. Bernice Redden is there. Thank you, A.B. Jones. Thank you, Barbara Grant. Thank you so very much. I asked you a few questions, and I don't know, I got away from Rosetta Divina. Thank you for being there. Let's see. I visited President George Washington's home in Mount Vernon, Virginia. Yes, I've seen it on YouTube several times. I've never visited there, but it's interesting, very interesting. We have to chat about that one of these days, Theresa. Yes, we've done so much in this country, so we need to have it in all American history, Barbara Grant says, regarding the subject of Black history in this month that we celebrate. Yes, indeed. Who else can I say hello to very quickly? Yes, the Department of Education has been dismantled, designed to support the Civil Rights Act 1964, of course, because if people don't have education and when oppressors are over education, they will see to it that the formerly oppressed do not have adequate public education, because when people are educated, they think properly. They're able to see, they're able to critically analyze situations. Yes, I wasn't going to bring her full name up. Lisa McMahon, yes, currently over. Yes, thank you, Pamela. You would do that and help us with that. Thank you. Loretta Evans is there. Greetings back to you. Yes, yes. Connie Farrington Watson is there. Thank you. Thank you, Dolores Gaines. Good evening to you. Yes, 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 yes. So I'm going to give you very quickly, I'm going to just set this out here. I don't even want to get into this, but I'm just going to sit this out here. I said, sit this out here very quickly. And then I'm going to allow you or ask you for your comments, okay? Um, let's see. I had two pieces to that. I don't know if I can give you both right now. Hang on one second, everyone. Now, we saw a minute ago, we saw the, well, I'm going to talk through this because this doesn't have any sound. So here you are. You tell me what you think about this. Now, we had a week or so ago, our illustrious president, and I don't even want to put this out here, but I have it just in case you missed it. But the president of this country, 45/47, put out on his Truth Social network a picture. It really was a litany of pictures of former presidents, including President Barack Hussein Obama and his wife Michelle Obama. And he had just a litany of animals and ape-like creatures or monkey-like creatures with their faces on them. And I think everyone has seen that. But now after the fact, let's just look at it. This is just a short list, all right, um, to try to make primates, and that's a long. I did an entire program on that a few years back. You can go through our montage of the silence programs and find where this mindset has come from, whence it has come ever since. There has been an ever since. There have been people assisted by others like Charles Darwin, who wasn't the first, but his theories of evolution added to this idea of people of color being primates. And so this president put out, and even Tim Scott, who is just as Tim Scott, the only man of color who is in the Senate, who is a Trumpian, who is in his own words, "I love you, man," loves Trump, and thought probably, okay, I'll leave that alone. It was he who said, "This is the. I hope this is AI," referring to, all right. I hope this is AI, because if it is not, this is the most racist thing that I've seen come. He either said out of the White House or from this administration. I think I've heard it said both, and I think I read that he said from this administration. And so we have come to find out that it wasn't. The president has blamed, as he always does, some other assistant for letting this get out. He didn't apologize. He was asked what he apologized for. Of course, he said no, because he's flawless and faultless, because that's what a Führer such as Adolf Hitler does, and that's the mindset they have. They can do no wrong, and the people are always wrong, but never the fearless leader, let's just say. And so I just want to put this clip out here, and let's just compare the two. Since they're primates, since former President Barack Obama and his wife are primates, let's just look at a short list. Barack Obama, 3 Emmy Awards, 3 Grammy Awards, Time Person of the Year, and legitimate Nobel Peace Prize owner. He owns one. And then let's look on the other side, Donald Trump, FIFA Peace Prize, and you know what that means. Twice impeached, convicted felon, found liable for sexual assault, and that list is ongoing with his association with. Um, we are told that these people are so egregious in their actions. I wasn't there holding the light, so I do not know. But if these people, if the reports from the Epstein files are correct, we're being told that there was some cannibalism, large scale cannibalism going on, raping of children, of girls on Epstein's island. And so here we have this. So what say ye? I'll just allow the graphic to speak for itself. And I'm just wondering, what are you all's comments? What are you all's comments? I just wanted to sit this here and go back to where we need to go. Uh, I taught biology for 25 years, and I never taught evolution. I described it as changing. By definition, the word evolve means to change. That's very safe, Pamela. authoritarian regime take over at work? Absolutely. That's my word. I coined a combination of absolutely and show enough. Absolutely. Lies about the fact that it was posted by him. Yes, absolutely. My friend, Dr. Layton, has said, thank you for being there, sir. God blessings to you and your precious, precious family. Thank you for addressing this racism. You're very welcome. Too bad for him that the love isn't returned. Yeah, I know. Don Lemon, object of attack on First Amendment. Yeah, his right to speak out. So I just wanted to put this graphic out here and see what you all thought. So how can a man be a scholar and the other not, and yet he is primate and his wife is a primate? Yes, DOJ is protecting pedophiles. Department of Justice, yes, sexual exploitation. It's getting crazy. And this is why it is imperative that we are educated in our responses, as well as poised in our responses. We have to be bigger and better than those who are bringing accusations and bringing negative slants, but at the same time, we have to be prepared to speak out. We have to be prepared to address. And for what I can tell now, the Obamas have not addressed it, and neither would I. There's some things you don't justify with comments, but I do think people that are around you should squelch, should address, should speak out against if a leader's leadership has been effective. And so I did want to do due diligence and set that out there, or sit that out there just for a minute. I don't know why I'm on this set thing, but here we are. Now, on the other side, I found something a few days ago. This is not the subject of our show, our program tonight, but I do wish for you to see this. This is the response, I feel, a good response for all of our white-skinned supremacist. If the shoe doesn't fit, then don't wear it. Uh, 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 Christian, white-skinned evangelicals, whom we love. I have to put this in here, but I have noticed no one that I saw on the national scene came out and condemned this president for the primate showing or the display in the pictorial of President Obama and his wife, Michelle. I haven't heard a word. I haven't heard a peep from these people who have lined up and rendered their stages, their influence to this president, the 45/47. I haven't heard them say anything. I haven't heard it from the big voices, if you would codify ministers as such, large national, international ministries, not a word. They came out and supported. They have said on their own platforms, so forth and so on. But I do want to, I found something that I think every evangelical.
Oh, my word. I am a registered Republican. My dad was the president of American Pipeliners Association, so I came by it rather naturally. Voted for the president, supported him, but I really want to apologize. I mean, I'm looking at this awful picture of the Obamas. What an embarrassment to our country. All this man does is tell lies. He is not worthy of the presidency. He takes bribes blatantly, and now he's being a racist blatantly. They were supposed to deport the dangerous criminals. They were not supposed to go after small children, storm schools, bring terror upon, the little kids and the women and children, not just the immigrants in the school. All the children are scared. This is not a decent man. This is not an honest man. He openly takes bribes. he's pathetic as a president, and I just want to apologize to everybody in the country for supporting this rotten man.
John, did you vote for him in all 3 elections?
I did. I was sucked into the stupidity of creating jobs, and there are no more jobs in New Mexico. Things are worse than they were before. You cannot find a primary care physician. Our governor just passed some laws to try to help. If you are a young physician, we want you in New Mexico. Come here. There's a great need for you.
All right.
What say ye? What say ye? This is the position in my mind of a responsible believer who is white-skinned or black-skinned, because we have black MAGA Republicans as well. And I'm not talking about Republicans, just MAGA Republicans, of the ultra-conservative, of the Donald John Trump nature Republicans, these extremists, I would say. This is what I would hope that ministers, this man who is broken by this demonstrative, disrespectful disassociation with humanity displayed by this government. This man said he voted for this president 3 times. Of course, he lost well, anyway. So he voted for him all 3 times, but he's repentant. He is, he understands the derogatory, the extreme derogatory nature of this presidency. He understands the weightiness of what these actions and these kinds of slants, these kinds of racial slurs are doing to this country. And he apologizes. You could feel his passion. You could understand this is nothing fake. This is nothing contrived or no, this is an action. And I would feel better about some of these ministers and ministries who have lined up and are in lockstep with this government, with this president, if they would come back and in a way of brokenness, repent to the American people, to their parishioners, to people of color. This is what you do. Everyone is wrong from time to time. Everyone has a myopic or skewed view at some point in time. I could feel better about the situation if I saw ministers whom I've loved over the years, whom I've supported over the years, whom I now have, I'm very cautious of because of things they've consistently said, support they've consistently loaned, influence they've given over a situation that is wrong. The Bible tells us, the scripture tells us that we are supposed to be, the church is supposed to be the pillar and ground of truth, not of falsity, of truth, not indecision, but we're the pillar and ground of truth. And here is this man, and he sounds like a blue-collar person, and he openly comes on C-SPAN and repents. Now, if I could see other people take this position, then there would be a different position I may foster. Your comments. I'll come back to that. All right, so we have about 30 minutes. Has Black History Month played out? The real question is, do we still need Black History Month? Has Black History played out? I'm waiting for y'all's comments on those, on that former clip, last clip. Has Black History Month played out? Do we still need a Black History Month? Well, firstly, on the subject of history, allow me to give you a few quotes I found to be meaningful regarding the subject of history. It was Marcus Garvey who said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. So that means if we're not historically oriented, The metaphor is a tree without roots, not without missing one root, but without the root system altogether. So how can a tree grow without roots? How can a person live without understanding their roots? Again, it was Maya Angelou who says, history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived. You cannot unlive history. Although we have these people who are whitewashing history every day, retracting actual facts about history, um, doing everything they can to take Black people out of history, out of American history, redacting, so forth. But again, back to the quote, it was Maya Angelou who said, history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. On the subject of history, why do we embrace Black history in America? There's a quote by an unknown author that I love. Our history is not a history of defeat. It is a history of survival. Would everyone just type in that word survival? Survival. It is a history of survival. It's a history of survival. Our history is not a history of defeat. It is a history of survival. And there are a lot of people who attempt to jade Black history, the history of the African in America, and jade it as, if they're going to tell it at all, they attempt to slant it as some sort of defeatist history. But it's really a history of survival. Are you all typing that in the comment section? It was Carter G. Woodson, and I'll give you a few brief notes about him in a minute's time. If a race, and this is the ethnic group or demographic, if a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes negligible, a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. And this is what other people, other races, bigots, racists, supremacists, Jim and Jane Crowists, if you will, this is what they attempt to do. The attempt is to, after we have stolen the continent, that continent of North America, which belonged to the Native Americans, the Aborigines. I'm told that there were people of color that were here, and I could give you some history on that, but we'll talk about that another time. Then, after these Europeans understood, they lacked so much knowledge concerning the building of this country, the rigor that was involved. Not only that, but the architectural understandings that needed to be had, they lacked. These people were just commoners. They were those who thought themselves as they came from Great Britain, let's just say England, but they did not even understand bathing. They didn't understand planting and harvest. They had no knowledge of that. So what did they do? They extracted free people from, and they stole people now and made them not just slaves. Slavery existed, general slavery existed around the world prior to this, but this is now chattel slavery, where you own body, soul, and spirit of a man or a woman, let's just say it that way, and brought them from Africa to America to work a country. And these people came with architectural skills, building concepts. They understood it. They understood planting. They understood harvesting. They understood, let's just say, agriculture. They understood maintenance, both body maintenance and maintenance of things. They were inventors. They were creators. They were people. And just think now, so when they came, they built this country. Yes, they were not just slaves that were just mistreated. The treatment was horrific. It was horrendous. It was egregious. But not that they were just slaves. These people were slaves who were charged with, and I'm using that word very loosely, building this country. So how did they know about cotton? How did they know about planting? They brought it from Africa. How did they know how to build buildings like the White House? How did they know that was built by those who were slaves? How did they know how to build the plantation homes? These people didn't have that until the slaves arrived. They had these skills, these people. And so there's a desire of those who recorded history to squash out the African in American history. Oh, I could go so many ways. Let's on the subject of history. All right. Carter G. Woodson, I'll give you this former quote. Carter G. Woodson is known as the father of Black history. If you don't hear me say anything, please hear me say that tonight. Carter G. Woodson is known as the father of Black history. Woodson's life was a testament to the importance of education. He was the son of former slaves and worked in coal mines as a young man. Now notice this is an important fact. He didn't start high school until he was about 20 years of age because he was what? A field worker. And then he went on to become the second African American to earn a PhD, a doctorate of philosophy, from Harvard University. And who was the first? Who was the first African? W.E.B. Du Bois, or Du Bois, as some people would say. It's a French name. So why does reclaiming history matter? Why? And I'm going somewhere with this, so stay with me. Don't sleep on this one. I'm going to shock you with a few facts, and then we're going to close this program. For many years, Black history was either admitted from textbooks or distorted. This is what I was talking about. We talk about redacting history, when you talk about slanting history, if it was recorded at all, or if the history shows people of color as being defeated without showing them as survivalists. That's what history. Remember, history is owned by those who recorded it, which were usually those who were wealthy, those who had the ability to record history and to print it, let's just say, and then to distribute the printed matters of history. These particular thinkers, let's just say, argue that studying Black history isn't just about the past. It's about correcting the record to build a better future. We have to be able to tell those who come behind us who they are. Not only who they are, whose they are, and whom they are. What really is embodied inside of them conceptually. Let's just deviate for just a minute. The history of Black history, now Black History Month, initiated by historian Carter G. Woodson in 1926, originally as a week of just representing people of color for all the obvious reasons I've just given you. It was designed to ensure Black history was not forgotten or ignored in schools and public discourses. Black History as a Month celebrates the resilience, now please hear this, the resilience, culture, and achievements of the Black community, particularly following centuries of slavery and discrimination. Now, 1619 is the year that 20 some, as the Bill of Lading records, slaves, the first slaves were brought here to this country from Africa. 1619. So for centuries, mistreatment. Again, the Emancipation Proclamation wasn't signed until what was 1863-ish, circa, let's just say, approximately. The Civil War was fought over slavery, whether or not slavery would continue in this country. 1863, 1865, and then, of course, you had Juneteenth 2 years thereafter. So just giving you approximate dates here. So you just think about how long people, Black-skinned people, the bronze, the browns, and Black-skinned people in this country, after being brought here, have endured mistreatment. So we have to have something that elevates, uh, yes, the mindsets of people of color who have been so disenfranchised and marginalized intentionally over these years. Uh, I was having a conversation with Theresa Thomas, who is a historian and educated and has served in the branches of education in public school, and a very studious person whom I admire. I admire most of these people who are in the chat. And she was talking to me. We were having probably 2 or 3 hour conversation about historical events as it world history and then American history. And she says to me, she says, "Do you know if you put, she's kind of erudite. She says, do you know if you put all the thoughts, all of the energy, all of the movements of the civil rights advances and advantages in one word, you know what that word would be?" And I said, "No, that's a very healthy question. How could you? I mean, it's loaded. How could you put it in one word?" And she gave me one word, and I've never forgotten it. Some years back, and it really has enlightened me, and it continues to turn the lights on. She said that word would be uplift, UPLIFT, uplift. She said that was the whole mantra of civil rights and the movement and everything that uh, involved the historical advancements, the projections, better projections, the better images displayed of the freedoms that were sought. It came, the preaching. I studied a book once, and I don't even know what book it was, that said that even the Black experience in church during the civil rights movement and just before was about, there's a theological term for it. I don't want to get into that because it would sound too complicated. But it really was about giving Black people in church a reprieve from their oppression Monday through Saturday. Men were called boys. They were treated, if a white-skinned man walked in on the sidewalk, they had to step off of it. A white-skinned woman, and children the same. The children called these Black men boys. The church was the only place where people of color could have some dignity. And so the ministers of that day had to preach them happy, let's just say it that way, because they were so repressed as a culture, Monday through Saturday, so disrespected, so downtrodden, so looked down upon, so robbed, so denigrated, so disenfranchised, so spoken pejoratively of, so ill described as a people because of the color of their skin. The church was the only place that these people could have dignity. And so, yes, I understood then better what the hoop was all about, what the moaning and the groaning was all about, what the dance was all about. It's a different day today, but yet with the underpinnings of what that same period of time yet represents as a people. A man and a woman has to understand that we're still in a world where in God, in Christ, through Jesus' blood, we are equal. God does not have stepchildren, but we're in a world that is fallen conceptually. All right, I went off. You'll forgive me. Please forgive me. I went off. I was talking about Carter G. Woodson. The month celebrates the resilience, culture, and achievement. So yes, emphatically, we need Black history 24/7, 365, 364 and a quarter to be exact. This month celebrates the resilience, culture, and achievements of the Black community, particularly following centuries of slavery and discrimination. So February was chosen. I did not know this. Does anybody know why the month of February is chosen? I know you would say the quick answer, and this is what I said too. The month was chosen. Well, Carter G. Woodson was the father of Black History Week. And then later it evolved under a particular president. I want you to tell me who that president was. That this would be an annual celebration of a particular month. And this president, and through his administration, the month of February is chosen for two reasons. I did not know this. I did not know this. May I tell? Can somebody tell me why the month of February is chosen? Pamela Adams, my daddy passed away when I was 4. My condolences to you, man. You've turned out well. But my older siblings, to me, they remember hearing my daddy being called boy. Yes, she has older siblings, and just think about how denigrating that is for your children to hear a white man, because of the color of your skin, address a Black man and call him boy, and call your mother mammy or girl, or the disrespect. Okay. Yes, one of the reasons was that the month of February was chosen was Frederick Douglass's birthday. You're exactly right, Theresa Thomas. And she says the second one was well, somebody said it's because it's the shortest month. That's what I said, Dolores, for years. But no, there were two reasons. One was because this was the birth month of Frederick Douglass, right? The other was because it's the birth month of Abraham Lincoln, who was considered, and there's a lot of conjecture. I've done 2 or 3 programs on that. You can go through our litany of programs and pick one up. But Abraham Lincoln was the signer of the Emancipation Proclamation that made slavery, at least on paper, illegal in this country. So the reason the month of February was chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, 2 key figures in the fight of the abolition of slavery. Yes, I asked the question, who was the president? Pamela Dobbins tells us it was Gerald Ford. Yeah, he who was the vice president of the Richard Milhouse Nixon administration. So I think it was 1976 that Gerald Ford put into place that Black History Month would be celebrated in this country. Yes, Erica Williams Terrell, welcome to celebrate the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And she has the praised hands. Thank you. Yes, you're exactly right. Just another educator. And thank God for educators. I'm telling you, we need every melanated, carmelated, skinned person who is in education, who is doing a Herculean job in moving the masses forward. I tip my hat to you, and forever shall. Yes, Leah J. H. Wiggins, welcome in. It was started as a week. Yes, that's what we're saying. And it migrated under President Ford's administration. I think the year was 1976. And he who was the vice president of Richard Milhouse Nixon after his impeachment became then president. And the list goes on. So here we are. Black History Month is an annual month-long observance in February dedicated to honoring the achievements, struggles, and contributions of Black people to the United States and to world history. And I have to emphasize that, and to world history. It was established, please hear me, it was established, Black History Month, to address the historical exclusion of Black narratives from the mainstream, educating the public on stories of people of color's achievements that are often omitted. So considering this statement that Black History Month was established to address the historical exclusion of Black narratives from the mainstream, educating the public on stories often omitted. Emphatically, I answer my own question. Yes, we not only need Black History Month, we need Black history emphasized every day of the week, every month of the year, in our actions and in our dispositions. So, considering this statement, has Black History Month run its course? The answer for me is no. And if it's for you, I want you to type that in the chat. No, just no as in complete sentence. No, period. No, because Black history, the recognition of Black History Month as it stands today, has not, in my opinion, accomplished these objectives. The narratives are still misunderstood, misconstrued. Many stories are often omitted, and I'm going to show you a few as I work to close. There's something. Here's the reason. Here's the reason, and I want to be academic. I don't want to just be emotional. I want to be academic. Okay. I want this discussion to be strengthened by academia and that which can be proven, not hyperbole, not just emotional slants and striations, but that which can be justified. There's something that was called the Patent, Patent, Patent Act of 1793. Now, get the year right, 1793, which explicitly stated that patent applicants, that is, you had a creation, you had an invention, you had something that was going to make life better, and you applied for a patent so that the idea, the concept, the invention, the creation could be owned, then monetized. In other words, you get paid for the concept. But the Patent Act of 1793. Now remember, Black people were brought to this country by the first 20 in 1619. So now this is 100 years. Slavery has gone on 180 years, let's just say. Slavery has gone on. And then the slaves, these Black people, are starting to, they have 2 generations, 3 generations, let's just say, here in this continent. And they're starting to improve things that were happening on the plantation, buildings going up, crops that were being planted, ingenuity was being seen and realized. And white slave owners and masters not only had them as chattel slaves, but they began to own, take control of the slaves' intellectual property. Now watch me. So this Patent Act of 1793, now remember, slaves are not freed until 1865, circa 1865. 2 years later, Juneteenth, let's just say 1865, 1860, 67, 68. All right, stay with me. This Patent Act of 1793 explicitly stated that patent applicants must be citizens of the country. And it was at that time enslaved people could not be citizens. It wasn't until the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to this Constitution, that those 3 amendments are known as the Civil Rights Amendments, okay, because they ended slavery legally, gave equal rights of citizenship. Then you had that Black men were able to vote, 13, 14, 15 amendments. So until that, these amendments are placed into play, you had people of color who could not be citizens. So stay with me. So now let's talk about just a few things that you heard about, but you never heard taught in your secondary education, elementary education, and for me, junior high education. You never heard this. Let's talk about the cotton gin. I was always told that the cotton gin was the creation of Eli Whitney. See, I'm starting to go back and research all the things I was, and okay, all the things I was told, because I was also taught that the first Thanksgiving was a happy time when the then Indians and the settlers who came and stole the country from the then Indians, they were sitting at the as the colonies were being set. They sat together and gave God thanks for for protecting them from the weather and helping them to grow crops. And the first thing, man, that's a lie. The first Thanksgiving was no such thing because the then Native Americans were fighting with the settlers who were trying to steal their land by any means necessary. So just like I was taught that, and it was a lie. I was taught that the United States cowboy was who was representing the country, and the Indians, then Indians, were enemies. That's a lie. Then Indians owned the land. The cowboys were stealing the land from the enemies. So I've had to just start researching things. See, the cotton gin, I was taught that Eli Whitney was credited with inventing the cotton gin in 1793. Historical accounts and oral tradition suggest that he may have adopted the idea from enslaved people on the plantation where he was staying. Specifically, historians point to an enslaved man named Sam. Of course, by that time we didn't have last names, and then when we did get last names, they were given by the plantation or whatever. But my last name is Matthews, and that probably came from a white enslaver because whatever my people's traditional name was from Africa, that was all lost in the Middle Passage. So much. Okay. Sam and others who had already developed similar manual methods for separating seeds from fiber, and that's what the cotton gin did. Under the law at that time, any invention by an enslaved person belonged to the quote unquote master, making it impossible for the true creators to be recognized. So even the cotton gin, the machinery that came along that caused the number one cash crop of the enslaver that was harvested by black skinned people to now become more profitable because you could separate the seed from the fiber, and the fiber was that which was sold, and it was the biggest thing. Cotton was bigger than any other established monopoly, any other established industry, business. You could combine them all, even with banking. You could combine banking and everything else. Cotton was bigger, and cotton by way of slavery. But the concept came from Sam. Let's talk about, did you know this? This is why we need Black history, because history attempts to marginalize people of color, to create this notion that people of color are worthless because of the color of our skin. And we made no contribution, and that is a big lie. Tell them I said it. The Lubricating Cup by Elijah McCoy. I've talked about this before. Elijah McCoy was a prolific inventor with over 50 patents, most notably the automatic lubricator for steam engines. Please listen. Before his invention, trains had to stop constantly to be oiled. You know, after the rail system that was laid out by men of color after they were picked up off of the streets, after slavery had ended, they were then sold in many instances back to their original plantation owners. And they were done that way by the county sheriffs, who were the replacement enslavers, and money was exchanged. And so they would be put back out in prison camps and working rock quarries and mining camps, and also laying down these cross ties and the rail for the train system. And so it was this black man who understood, when the train system came up, that the trains didn't have to keep stopping to be oiled. So before his invention, trains had to stop constantly to be oiled, because his invention was so superior. While competitors created cheap knockoffs, engineers would ask for this black man's specific part by name to ensure quality, leading to the famous phrase, and you've heard it before, the real McCoy. This is from whence it's come, the real McCoy. Please listen, while he held the patent, he struggled to see the full financial windfall because he lacked the capital to manufacture them himself, often selling his patent rights to white investors for a fraction of their value. Let's just keep going. This takes me somewhere. There was something called everyone typed that in that phrase in the chat. Let's just do Elijah do justice, even though his family never profited from the full benefits. Type his name in there. Type the name Sam, and then on another part of the thread, type in Elijah McCoy, or just type in the real McCoy. And then the landlord's game. I never knew this. And I hope I'm giving you some reasons in terms of why Black History Month, Black History Daily is important, are important. The landlord's game, huh? There was something called the landlord's game that later evolved into something we all know as Monopoly. Huh? You do want to hear the rest of what I have to say. While Elizabeth Maggie, Magie, if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. While Elizabeth Maggie patented the original landlord's game, the version we know as Monopoly was heavily influenced by Black communities in Atlantic City. Black communities in Atlantic City who were monopolizing property. They added the street names and established the rules of the road for the game. Charles Darrow eventually sold the game to Parker Brothers, and that's where Parker Brothers distributes and manufactures, if you will, all the tokens and everything concerning Monopoly. But Parker Brothers bought it from Charles Darrow as his own invention, largely ignoring the communal modifications made by Black players that made the game a success. And so, yes, there was this landlord's game from which came Monopoly. Landlord's game was created by the white culture, Elizabeth Maggie, or Maggie, either one, but Black culture, that Black communities in Atlantic City added the street names from the communities that they owned to it and evolved it into what was then called Monopoly. And Charles Darrow saw the opportunity, seized the game, and sold it to Parker Brothers, and the Black people were never mentioned. So every time you play Monopoly, you tell this story. Research it. There's a woman by the name of Henrietta Lacks. This one's painful. In 1951, a sample of Lax's cancerous cells was taken without her knowledge or consent at Johns Hopkins Hospital. These cells, known as HeLa cells, remember, Henrietta Lacks. he, Henrietta Lacks, Lacks. So the first two letters of her first and last name. HeLa cells were the first, listen, immortal human cells grown in a lab. They became, listen, they became the foundation for modern miracles like the polio vaccine, gene mapping, GENE mapping, and COVID-19 research. Please listen, while biotech firms profited immensely, Lax and her family remained uncompensated and uncredited for decades. That's why we need Black history. I have more. You all have a few more minutes? Just a few more minutes? I want to be finished in an hour. I'm a little bit over an hour. Dr. Charles Drew, I've learned about him, but listen to this. Dr. Charles Drew, who is codified as the father of blood banking. Now, how many of you know when you talk about blood, this is the most essential element of life of all flesh, by God's designation and definition. The life of all flesh is in the blood. So Dr. Charles Drew, a man of color, is codified as the father of blood banking. Dr. Drew revolutionized medicine by developing methods to separate and preserve blood plasma, which could be stored for much longer than whole blood. During World War II, he led the Blood for Britain program and became the first director of, and I didn't know this, he became the first director of the American Red Cross. I didn't know that. Nobody taught me that. American Red Cross. Despite his success, he resigned in 1942. Please listen. Because the military insisted on segregating blood by race, a practice he correctly denounced as unscientific, because the truth of the matter is, all other things being equal, all blood is transferable because we are of one family. It's the human family. Now, there's a sad story about Dr. Charles Drew. I won't go into that because, and it's concerning his death, regarding the entire objectivity of his creation regarding blood. Katherine Johnson. See, this is why we need Black history. Katherine Johnson. These are people of color, known as the mathematician who verified the computer. By hand, by mind. Before John Glenn's 1962 orbit of the moon, he famously refused to fly. White astronaut John Glenn refused to fly unless Katherine Johnson personally checked the electronic computer's math. She also calculated trajectories for the first human space flight and the Apollo 11 moon landing. They tell you about the astronauts, but they don't tell you about the hidden figures. Did y'all see what I just did? Y'all don't want to talk to me. Katherine Johnson. Here's another name you need to know. Mary Jackson. To become NASA's first Black female engineer in 1958, she had to sue the city of Hampton just to attend night classes at an all-white high school. Her work in the wind tunnels was essential for understanding, you guessed it, supersonic flight. Now, here's a big one. I was teaching something, I think not long ago, a couple of months ago, and I had read something about the Wright brothers, sons of a Methodist minister who were credited with the agency of flight and so forth and so on. And I just kept reading. And I read something that was amazing. That was amazing to me. Please listen, while the Wright brothers are credited with the first controlled power flight in, catch the year now, 1903. there were black pioneers experimenting with aeronautics and flying machines long before, quote unquote, flying machines, long before and during that same era. These men often faced that patent trap, because they weren't allowed to be American citizens. They couldn't apply for a patent. So their white masters could take the credit, and consequently, the Wright brothers in this agency could claim all the credit for research that forebears, men before them, had already schemed out. Listen, listen, listen to me. These men of color, often faced what was known as the patent trap. I just explained it. They couldn't invent the machine, but without social standing or massive capital, no, excuse me, they could invent the concept. I'm talking about an aeroplane, right? They could invent, and they did invent the machine, but without social standing, they couldn't become citizens or massive capital. Their ideas were often absorbed into the broader industry without their names attached. The most notable figure in this, what I would call the pre-Wright brothers era, is John W. Maynard, Menard, a man of color. Are y'all still with me? Or am I boring you? John W. Maynard, though the most detailed technical near misses came from inventors like James Meeks, another man of color, and John Pickering, another man of color. The mysterious, let's talk about pre-1890. So the Wright brothers are credited with the first flying machine, otherwise known as the airplane, in 1903. So let's talk about pre-1903. Let's go back to 1890. The mysterious Maynard machine, it was called. Are y'all still with me? John Willis Maynard was the first black man elected to the U.S. Congress, though he was never seated. That's another story. I think I've done a show on that, a program on that. He was also a dreamer of flight. In the late 1800s, he claimed to have developed a concept for a flying machine. However, because of the political turmoil of Reconstruction and the lack of funding for Black scientific research, his sketches and concepts never reached the patent or prototype stage. Like many Black intellectuals at the time, of the time, his scientific ideas were often dismissed as fantasies by white press that didn't believe Black men were capable of advanced physics. But the Wright brothers built from these sketches, these concepts. James Meeks, let's go to 1902. Just 1 year before the Wright brothers' success, James Meeks filed a patent. This is a Black man, 1902, filed a patent for an apparatus for navigating the air. They didn't call it an airplane, aircraft. They didn't know what that was. But the apparatus for navigating the air, the invention, it was a sophisticated design for an air-styled ship, aircraft it was, that used rotating fans for propulsion and steering, a precursor to modern helicopters and drones. What happened to the profits? Meeks was never able to secure the massive investment needed to build a full-scale model. In the early 1900s, white venture capitalists, listen to me, white venture capitalists were unwilling to bet on a Black inventor. His designs were eventually, quote unquote, shared in technical circles, influencing later airship designs. But Meeks, listen, Meeks, the inventor, died without seeing a dime of profit from the multi-billion-dollar aviation industry his ideas helped spark. The Wright brothers and everything else that came conceptually was built on the shoulders of these Black men. Let's talk about John Pickering, another Black man, 1900, patented an airship design 3 years before the Wrights. That's why I don't give them credit anymore. 3 years before the Wrights, he faced constant ridicule and was unable to find manufacturers willing to work with a Black man. His patent eventually expired, and the lifting body is what he called it. Concepts he used were later integrated into aeronautical engineering by major companies. And guess what? He made no money. His patent expired. They stole all of his sketches, all of his ideas, and he profited nothing. His name is not even mentioned. And then finally, Charles Ritchie in 1914, he invented a structural design for aircraft that allowed for better stability. His patent was essentially ignored by the burgeoning big aviation companies at the time, who used similar structural reinforcements in World War II planes without compensating him. Theft. And here's a fun one. This is the last one. Are you all there? Maybe you all are processing. I have some members who say that when I say the church is quiet, we're processing. Are you all processing? Listen to this one. Now, I'm not a proponent here. I'm not condoning this, but just as a historical fact, all right? I'm not, get it right now, because this is on the subject of Jack Daniels. We call this in Jacksonville, Florida, JD. Jack Daniels, the real Jack Daniels recipe. Now, I know none of us that are in this conversation tonight, this doesn't have anything to do with you, but just for historical purposes. The real Jack Daniels recipe. For over 150 years, that's 150. For over 150 years, the story of Jack Daniels's whiskey was that a preacher named Dan Call, Dan, D-A-N, like Daniel, Dan Call, C-A-L-L. I heard this part of the story. Dan Call taught Jack Daniels how to distill. In 2016, however, the company finally acknowledged the truth. Nathan, and his nickname was Nearest, N-E-A-R-E-S-T. So Nathan, quote unquote, Nearest Green, Nathan Green, an enslaved man, was the master distiller who actually taught Jack Daniels the quote unquote Lincoln County process, charcoal filtering. Listen to this. Green was the first head distiller for the company, but his name was left out of the marketing and history books for over a century. And guess what else? If his name was left out and he was the creator, he was the inventor, he made no money. See, this is history. This is why we need history. Can you think about how many people of color, formerly, before knowing Jesus, drank Jack Daniels? Can you think of how many people of color have supported the Jack Daniels line? And all the time, they never understood it was one of their forebears that was responsible. I mean, even with this, let's just say, vice that could create cirrhosis of the liver, that could cause people to not think and operate in their full capacity, something that could be limiting, let's just say. But just on the brighter note, how inspiring it would be for people of color to understand that even in I've given you just several categories where people of color have made the difference. I've got to close. I hope this has been inspiring. I hope this has caused us to read, 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 study, 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 question, question, question. The Wright brothers, that's all I ever heard my whole life. The Wright brothers created the first flying aircraft, and it was their invention. Never mentioned people of color along the way that contributed, never mentioned sketches. I was reading something a few months ago and I saw sketches that these men of color, sophisticated sketches of a flying machine that predated the Wright brothers. You see, we're robbed of our potential when we don't know our history by way of what was in our forebears, what was in the ancestors, what has been passed on to us. We would think better thoughts. We would see ourselves as a better people. We would have better expectations if we just knew that this is a part of who we are. It's who we are. It's trapped inside of us as a people, and that's what other demographics are afraid of, if I can put it that way, with the preposition at the end. They know, they've studied, they understand the history that they've kept from us. This is why the repression is so vehement. This is the reason for discrimination. This was the reason for discrimination in education. This was no desire for competing, because they know what has been stolen. They knew what has been done. They understood what we didn't. And I could go on and on and on. It was business philosopher Jim Rohn who said, sincerity is not a test of truth. We must not make this mistake. He must be right. He's so sincere. He goes on to say it is possible to be sincerely wrong. We must judge sincerity by sincerity and truth by truth. As I open this program tonight, I told you it's Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 7, where God says it's a time to be silent, but there's also a time to speak. We cannot afford to be silent from our various platforms of influence. Somebody please type something in the comment section in the chat before you leave. Type something in there. Make the rest of the world know that you were here. Silence is, some people would say, golden. To them, I would say only until one's family and friends are negatively affected by wrongdoing. Others would say, to me, George, silence is great. To them, I would say, until someone's voice becomes necessary to save your life or corroborate your innocence. Silence, I will go on to say, is compromise. Silence is complicity with erroneous thinking. Silence is agreement with sanitized history. Silence is co-signing with control, racist, bigoted, and supremacy mentalities. Silence is equity and fairness in reverse. Silence robs supremacy of ever hearing truth and having the opportunity to change. Silence is the voice of continuous ethnic mistreatment. Silence validates inferior treatment. Silence is the approval of being objectified and maligned. Silence is often mistaken for agreement and consent. Silence is the devastation of a child being uncontrolled, untrained, and undisciplined by its silent parents. Silence is one level of maintaining and perpetuating cloaked ignorance. Silence is the ostrich syndrome, sticking one's head in the sand and hoping that things will get better while you're absent from the challenge. Silence is a subject that Black, bronze, and brown children must know how to correctly respond to racism, which they cannot know when we are silent. Truth does not require error to be silent in order to be in control. Error, however, requires the silence of truth to take control of and dominate any situation. Speaking the truth is not the crime, withholding it is. Be silent if speaking only serves to boost your ego or to seek validation. Blessings and peace to you and yours. I'm so elated and delighted that you've chosen to share this time with me. An hour and a half. I expected this to be just 1 hour program, but you are the co-host, and I have to go to the chat from time to time to hear from you. But thank you all so much. And if you see it beneficial, please share this program. Tell someone about it, and of course, I'll be here another time. I'm trying to do this at least once a month, if not more, so that I can spend time doing as many things as I can possibly do. So thank you all so much. I love you all. Blessings and peace to you and yours. Remember, we cannot afford to ever be silent again. Please type something in the chat before you leave, and I'll see you the next time.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with a harmony of liberty. Let our rejoice